All right. So we are finishing up what we did yesterday. So we started writing and solving portions yesterday, but we started with the solving part. So today, we're going to continue with the writing part. So this part is not in your notes, but I want to talk about it real fast. When you set up your proportions, we can set proportions up in different ways. Right? We can set them up this way, or we can set them up this way. And here's what I mean by that. So back in the day, when cell phones kind of first came out, you didn't actually just get a ringtone. You had to purchase new ringtones. Yeah, and they were not cheap. They were not cheap. So if you wanted to purchase a fun ringtone, you had to actually pay for it. So this table shows, back in the day, that if you purchased 2 ringtones and it cost you $6, how much would it cost to purchase 3 ringtones? Now, I think we all can figure out what this one's going to be, right? 2 to 6, you just multiply, right? It'd be 9, right? Because it's 2 times 3. Now, but what did you think about there? Did you think about it as 2 to 3, or did you think about it as 2 to 6? When you guys just think about this one, you probably thought about it as, how do I get from 2 to 6? Well, I multiply by 3. So how do I get from 3 to whatever this is? I multiply by 3. You thought about that proportion this way. Whereas yesterday we talked about common multipliers this direction, right? So you can also think about it this direction. So here, you can set it up as ringtones over dollars compared to ringtones over dollars. You can also compare it the other way. Ringtones to ringtones and dollars to dollars. You can set them up either way. Notice, the numerators have the same units and the denominators are the same units. That's important. This is from last month and this is from this month. So this is the group number 1, group number 2. So you can set them up group number 1, group number 2, or you can set it up as common units, common units. Proportions are very forgiving. The only way that you couldn't set this one up is 2 ringtones over X dollars. $6 over 3, that's the only way that wouldn't work. Okay? So keep that in mind as we're writing these proportions. There's 2 ways we can set it up. We can either set it up as the first thing and the second thing, or we can set it up as same units, and it changes per problem. So we're in our notes now. We're looking at the first problem. Yes, you used to have to pay for text messages as well. Now what do we pay for with cell phones? Pay for data. You used to have to pay for text messages. It was a really big deal when you could roll over your text messages. Like we got 300 a month, and we had to count. We had to make sure that we didn't go over because it was 10 cents per text. If you went over, it was expensive. Yeah, right. So when I was on my parents' plan, my parents were like, "You're not allowed to text anymore. You can't." I was I think 16 or 17 when I got my phone, and so I had a limit to text messages. And my best friend John. So if you imagine your calculator, right? Your calculator has those digits. Well, on phones they also have letters. My friend John was so fast, he could text like this with just the letters, right? You know how you guys, sometimes with your smartphones, there's a keyboard, so you can just type. Well, with 9 buttons, he would have to push 3, 4 times. You'd have to push A, B, and C. So to get to C, you'd have to go ... and then you'd get your C. And then if you wanted D, you'd click a different letter. If you wanted E, you'd have to click twice. So he was really, really fast. Anyway, a cell phone company charges $5 for 250 text messages back in the day. How much does the company charge for 300 text messages? So when we want to set this problem up, one of the key things to think about is, how do we want to set this up? Well, there's 2 choices. You have multiple choices. You can set this up as the first deal and the second deal, or you can set it up as money and texts. It's up to you how you set it up. When I read this problem, I read this as the first group and the second group. What would be the first ratio?
5 to 250.
Good, and we're gonna put units on these because that'll ensure that we have the proportion set up correctly. That's how I read it too, guys. And then what's our next ratio?
X to 300.
X dollars to 300 texts. Now what I want you to notice is that the numerators are both dollars. The denominators are both texts. That's how we're going to decide how to set up our proportion. If you decide that money's going to go on the top, then money needs to go on the top for both of them. Text is going to go on the bottom for both of them. So you notice these have the same units. Those have the same units. And these are the same group. I'm less concerned with you solving this one right now than I am with you setting it up correctly. I think you guys can solve it. But I want to make sure that you guys know, how else could we have set this proportion up? Ashley?
250 texts over 300 texts, and then $5 or extra.
Yeah, imagine this sideways. 250 over 300 is equal to 5 over x. That would also be an appropriate proportion for this one as well. Okay, we can set it up that way as well. Go ahead and solve this one. Go ahead and solve it. You have a calculator in front of you, so big numbers shouldn't matter. How many of you guys use cross products? Cool. How many of you guys use that vertical relationship between 5 and 250? How much is it? What's our unit price?
$5.
No, our unit price. Unit price would be the price per text. Well, that would be really, really tiny, it'd be 5 cents. How much is it per dollar? How many texts do you get for $1?
You get
50 texts for $1. It's $5 for 250 texts.
$1 for 100 texts.
It's $1 for 50 texts. $5 for 250. So you would divide them both by 5 to get how much it is for $1. What's our answer? What's our answer? How much is it for 300? $6.
And every 50 texts is $1.
Yep. So I'm gonna be honest with you, I wouldn't have used cross products on this one. I'm not saying if you did that's wrong. It's totally right. I would have used the vertical relationship between $5 and 250 texts to figure out that it's 50 texts per dollar. So 300 divided by 50 would be that. Okay? But $6, cross products is a fine way to solve this one. Let's look at number 8. There are 84 players on a football team. That's a big team, huh? In the pros, there's 53. Okay. The ratio of offensive to defensive players is 4-3. How many offensive players? How many offensive players are on the team? So how do I set up my proportion? Well, let's reread this problem. It tells us the ratio. Okay? Offensive players to defensive players. What is that ratio? Well, it'd be offensive to defensive, right? What is that ratio?
43?
4 to 3. Are we given the number of defensive players?
No.
No. What do we give it?
84 players on the overall.
Yeah, that's total. So if there are 4 offensive players and 3 defensive players, how many total players are there? I don't have the number of defensive players. I need to figure out a ratio, right? I can't set anything equal to this. Because do I know the number of defensive players?
No.
No, so I can't do 4/3 is equal to something. I can't because I don't have a defensive number. What do I have?
How many?
I have a total number. So I have an offensive to total number. What would that ratio be? For every 4 offensive players, there's 3 defensive players. So for every 4 offensive players, how many total players are there? 4 to what? 4 to? Where'd 7 come from? There's 4 offensive players and 3 defensive players. So how many total players are there? 7. That's the ratio. This is the proportion that I have to set up. I cannot set an offensive to defensive proportion because I don't have any defensive players. But now I can set up my proportion, okay? Here's the deal. It tells us how many offensive players are on the entire team. That's what gives us our hint as to how we can set up our proportion. So we need to set up offensive to total. So it'd be 4 offensive to 7 total is equal to what? Well, offensive players, that's our X, that's our unknown value, right? To 84. So, notice the structure of my proportion. Same units on the top, same units on the bottom. First group, second group. Now I just use cross products. 7x, 4 times 84. You guys have calculators, so that shouldn't be difficult multiplication. 7x equals what? 336. I was talking about 7 and x equals 48 what? Offensive players. Now the question is, how do I know what to do, right? Well, I'm told that there are this many offensive players. I don't know how many. That's what I need to find. So I need to set up a proportion with offensive players. The proportion I'm given is offensive to defensive. Now, I don't have a number over here for defensive players. I don't have that number. Okay. What I do have is the total number of players. So this is my ratio, oftentimes called a scale factor. This is my ratio, and this is my real world, right? This is my relationship, this is my real world. So I set the relationship equal to the real world. Ashley.
I'm still kind of confused as how we got this.
Okay, so if I split 84 up into groups of offensive and defensive players, I'll group them up into like practice groups. And I group them into 4 offensive players. How many defensive players will I send with them? 3. So how many players are in that group? 7 players. I could have a bunch of groups of 7. Because for every 4 offensive players, there are 3 defensive. which means for every 4 offensive players, there are how many total players? Well, on a team, there's an offense and a defense. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about special teams. Offense and defense together gives us the entire team. So we would set up our ratio as like 4 offensive, 2 offense and defense together, which should be 4 plus 3. Let's get on to doing at least one more. Humane Society houses 300 animals. The ratio of cats to all animals is 7 to 15.
So the 15 is total animals.
So 300 is the total, right? What is this 7 to 15 ratio?
How many cats
That's
do
all
cats have?
animals.
So what's the 7 represent?
Cats.
That's cats. What's the 15 represent?
The other animals.
That's all animals. So cats to total. So what's our relationship going to be? Well, 7 to 15 is cats to total. So that's what our relationship is going to be. Find a proportion that gives the number of cats. So 7 cats to 15 total is equal to, and notice it tells you your variable. What variable should we use? C over 300. Cats to total, right? Notice, 1 is the relationship. So the first group is the relationship between the cats to total. The second one is the actual, okay? How else could we have structured this proportion? We could have also structured it as cats and total. 7 cats over C cats equals 15 total animals over 300 total animals. That would also be a fine structure. How many cats are there in the Humane Society? Well, what are we trying to do here? What's that question asking you to do? Yeah?
Figure out how many cats are in humans.
Yeah, so mathematically, what would we need to do?
15,
You're thinking about the steps. I just want to know our goal. Like, what do we do? What are we doing? So we're trying to figure out how many cats. That's in the real world. In the math world, what do we need to do? I'm not asking you to give me the steps. I'm asking you to give me the overall.
We would subtract cats to the total amount of animals.
No, I need to solve. I need to solve for C. Mathematically, we would need to solve for C. That would be what we need to do. So solve for C. Go.
Oh, yeah.
Did you get 140 cats?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do this problem in your head if you think about it.
Yep. You could just double 15, get to 30, and then tack a 0 on to get to 300. Yep. So your scale would be 20. So you just multiply 7 times 20. Now this one, we don't have time to talk through it, but I do want to make sure that I bring it up. When you're doing these problems, don't cross multiply if you don't have to. Look for common multipliers, just like what Kobe said. He said, well, I can do this one in my head because 15 times 20 is 300, so 7 times 20 is 140. Same thing on this problem. Don't cross multiply if you don't have to. It will save you time, okay? It will save you time.